Welcome to the Game Masters Book Club, where great fiction becomes your next great tabletop role-playing experience. I'm the host, Eric Jackson, and today Chris Grannis and David Clarkson return along with our newest Game Master, Scott Legault, to transport us to the Sundered Realms, written by Casey Blair. Filled with spies, spellcasters, and a pair of hyper-competent magic nerds in love, our discussions of the book cover the definitions of romantasy, the proper way to speak Dwarvish, and plenty of media recommendations. Let's get into the conversation.
Okay, everybody, welcome to another episode of Game Masters Book Club. We've got one brand new Game Master, two veterans, and of course, as we've mentioned earlier, Craig, our fabulous recorder. Thank you, Craig. Always good to see your handsome bear face. Moving on, we're going to be talking about The Sundered Realms, a fantasy book by Casey Blair. But before we get into talking about the book, let's get into talking about our Game Masters and their game mastering journey. And our question this week, in particular, given the Sundered Realms, which is a realm that is full of gates, magical gates that lead to all different types of places, we're going to ask our Game Masters about how they've used gates in their games. And we will start with our brand new guest DM, Scott. Tell the people who you are, your gaming journey, and all about gates.
Hey, everybody. My name is Scott Legault. I have been a gamer since 1978. I've been running games since around the same time. I currently am the con chair at Rising Phoenix Game Con in Massachusetts in April. This will be our 5th year this year. And before that, I ran Dark Phoenix events, where we did events all over New England for folks. So been GMing for a long time. That's a little bit about me. What else can I tell you?
Oh, a little bit about how you use gates, magical gates in your campaign.
Sorry. Okay. So as to gates, very interesting. I read this book, and there's been a lot over the years. I'm an avid reader. I've probably read probably about almost 5,000 books in my life. It brought me back to, first of all, Charles DeLint's book, where they fight over the gates to a world. In addition to that, in my homebrew campaign, which is called Darkland, which has been going since the late 80s, we had a major war where one side used the gate to gate a army basically halfway across the world to attack a neighboring nation. And there was a big fight over that. And the mages were able to actually close the gate back down and shunt them back. And in doing so, they basically broke the world, and we ended up with an area of the world called the Shattered Realms now. So yeah, gates have been a bit prevalent in my own games here and there.
Fantastic. Okay, returning Game Masters, specifically Dave, say hi to the folks and tell them about gates.
Hello, this is David Clarkson. I don't know how to operate a microphone, but I do know how to run games. I've been running games since 1980, so about when cavemen first started rolling dice. I also work with Scott on running the Rising Phoenix Game Con. Very happy to be heading into our 5th year and looking forward to it. When it comes to gates, as I was reading the Sundered Realms, I was thinking of how the gates actually worked metaphysically. And I came to the realization that I've been running Ravenloft and the Domains of Dread since they came out in 2nd edition, and enjoying the heck out of it. And realizing that this is a very similar sort of metaphysical setup. It's a way to get to another realm that's the only way to get to the other realm. It's always made an interesting plot device so that you can both control the journey of the characters and also help them kind of dabble in some sort of larger magic. And I've been able to run some sessions where they've actually had to deal with how these gates connect to other realms. So it's always been a fun little piece of fantasy, and I really do enjoy it when I do put it into my games. Thanks, Eric.
No problem. I think gates really are terribly interesting and one of the best tropes of fantasy. Mr. Grannis, please talk to us about your gaming journey and about magical gates.
Hi, Chris Grannis here, and I am, obviously the young one here in the group since I've only been gaming since 1983. So I think.
Oh my God!
So
Wow.
I'm barely old enough to play these.
You're not a grognard. You're just a grog.
Exactly. I run games at Rising Phoenix, have nothing else to do with it other than, listening to Dave and Scott talk about it. but I am a longtime gamer, dictionary nerd, and designer and layout artist for several role-playing games, as well as many books. As for using gates in my games, it'll come as no surprise to anyone who's listened to any of the other podcasts with me. I have run a long-term changeling game, and those changeling games use quite a number of gates to get into and out of the dreaming. As a matter of fact, previously, one of the games that I've run recently, I think Eric was in it. We used gates for time portals, going back and forth through the time and spaces throughout our setting. I think the coolest portal used in my game was that of a lighthouse. So when the lighthouse's light traveled across a certain point in the water, it became solid and a gate to another dream realm.
Wow, that is pretty cool. Awesome. And yes, that was an awesome game. So thank you again. My name is Eric Jackson. I'm the host. I have been playing since the Pleistocene, and I really enjoy the idea of moving players around with magical gates. I can tell you that I use them in almost every campaign once characters get to a certain level, but my favorite instance of using a gate was there were a group of dark fae who were trying to bring their fellows into the world. There were two of them. They were relatively large, like giant-sized dark elves, and they were both standing, literally holding open the gate so that their fellows could march in. And my beloved spouse, Amelia, said, "Can I use my mage hand to tickle him underneath the arm and get him to drop the gate?" And then she rolled a 20 and he failed to save. So that became the infamous tickle bullet episode, which took down the entire Dark Elven army. So that's
what is the save versus tickling?
I don't remember what I picked at the time. It was one of those, sure, if you can make a blank roll, let's go for it. And as soon as you say that, the players instantly always make nat 20.
Conte.
Yes. So yes. yeah, probably con, maybe will. I don't know. Could have been any of those things. I'm pretty certain that was 4th edition, so it might have been a will save. Anyway,
makes sense.
Anywho, no tickle bullets were used in the Sundered Realms, which is the book that we're going to be talking about today, which is by Casey Blair. This is the first book in a series. There will be more books coming out. The Sundered Realms starts with Lyris, a newly minted elite spy that has been sold out by her government. She escapes the trap that they put her in, only to end up in Lord Vanor's hands as one of the most talented caster in all the realms. Vanor offers Lyris a deal, help him defeat a sorcerer who's made pacts with demons, the very same sorcerer who Lyris taught an ancient language to that makes his spells nearly unstoppable to anyone who doesn't understand the language. Spoiler alert, she's the only other one who knows that language. And if she does this, she becomes a citizen of his kingdom. If she doesn't do this, she goes to jail as a spy. Taking the deal, Lyris and Vanor travel the Sundered Realms, so named because ancient magics shattered the planet, but various land masses still exists in kingdoms that are connected by magical gates. All this traveling is to stop the evil sorcerer's schemes. And during this time, they realize that their partnership is not just about saving the world and duty and honor, but about their feelings for each other and their eventual love. Lyris and Vanor are adventurous, hyper-competent nerds in love. The magic system is as much a character as the fantastical people and places, and I like a book that takes the freedom of choice and consent seriously, because consent is sexy. What did I miss?
Yeah, that was.
I think you nailed it.
Yeah, that was a very good summary. I did like the fact that they made the realms distinct and different. They made them minor characters, and they mattered when they traveled from one place to another. The cultures, the conventions, things like that.
Yeah, and different systems of government.
It's definitely a game master's dream. Like, yes, okay, I can make a whole other society here, and we can do this, and I can make this happen. So, really did like that.
But part of my introduction and what the question that did come up is how those gates work. The way they described them were, first, I assume the usual big spinning portal in the middle of a field or something like that. But now I realize that you can't go far in that realm without passing through a gate. You can't get anywhere outside of there. It's a closed door unless you have the magic to go through it.
True, and they're all invisible, how I read them. So you have to know that they're there.
Yeah, I think the gates themselves actually existed in certain places in the realms. And you had to be able to, first of all, see them to access them and then be able to actually open them. So.
Yeah, she finds that initial gate, the one that she uses to escape, which I thought was really cool. Anybody else, other things you want to talk about the book before we leap into mechanics?
Other than our argument whether it was a romantasy or not.
Fair, yes.
Yeah, fair. I think this book actually came out. This now came out in 2024, so that is firmly within the romantasy era. I suppose it must be a romantasy, although, as we argued earlier, I think this is really just a fantasy book with a romantic element, and somebody who's marketing the book decided if we put the word romantasy on it, it's going to sell better.
And let's put one chapter with a sex scene in it, and that's
Yeah.
To be fair, when I read romance novels, and I read quite a few of them, when I read romance novels, the sex scene isn't what makes it for me. But the romance and romance, I like a long, drawn out, let's figure out how this is going to happen thing. And then I don't care if the sex is off page, that's fine. So for me, I'm like, all of that lead up, and I guess the technical term is, I like a slow burn. And this was definitely a slow burn.
Yes.
So I could see where, if you weren't into that, it could have been a little frustrating. It wasn't the main part of the book.
It was useful to see how those feelings mattered, the things that she thought and then said and did. It gave a little bit of a character study, but you're right, it was a minor part.
I also thought that their feelings affected their actions in the fact that both of them were always worried about offending the other one when they were doing things, which was both irritating as a reader.
Agreed.
But it was true. Like, he was like, "Oh, is she going to be upset that I said this thing?" And then she'd be like, "Oh, is he going to be upset that I didn't look at him?" It was a little bit, I don't know, a little much for me. But I did think a lot of that affected their actions.
I agreed. I think the problem is it went on a little too long. They resolved it and then unresolved it and then resolved it without there being any action involved or impact on it. So
right, it kept coming back up. And I think that was part of that was the good thing. I think
Yeah, and I was going to say, one of the interesting things that I noticed was lacking for most of the book. I didn't see any of that feelings matter in the magic. A lot of fantasy novels that comes up. Oh, if you have love, if you have happiness, it flavors the magic. That didn't seem to be a factor until close to the end, where I saw some dialogue that spoke to that, but most of it seemed to be the language. The language was what decided it, and your feelings weren't the important part.
And that was very interesting. The language thing was actually very interesting.
Yeah.
The fact
very, very.
that was the key to magic in general, not just the gates, but all the magic. So.
Yeah, it was definitely much more of a nerd plot than a romance plot. As I said, I love a hyper-competent couple, and they were definitely a hyper-competent couple. They were just the best of what they do. And
hyper-competent, except when they were going, well, maybe I don't love him. Maybe he doesn't love me. What am I going to do? Oh, my God.
Now that we've gotten through our romance discussion, it's probably time to give the people what they really came here for, which is mechanics. And if they like this book, The Sundered Realms, if they want to play in a world where there's interesting, nerdy gate magic, what system do you think is going to work for that? And that's what you guys, as the master game masters that you are going to answer. And I'm going to start with Dave and have Dave talk to us about his choice for the mechanics of The Sundered Realms.
Okay. My choice, if I was going to run Sundered Realms, I would want to use a generic system, a system that's very modular. And my choice of a more modern version of generic systems, which there are plenty of them, GURPS, hero systems, but they're a little older and way more crunchy, Cortex Prime. That's what I've used in the past. It does require a bit upfront work, but it allows you to bake in the concepts of the game, like language mattering in magic and people's relationships to each other. You could even work that into the attributes and the specific abilities that matter in the mechanics. And I do like the fact that the mechanics would support the story as opposed to they just be on the side. You just be rolling some d20s and looking for 15s or something. It really makes a big difference when those features are part of the mechanics that you'd use for the game. And so that would be my choice for this.
Awesome. Chris, would you like to go next?
Sure. Actually, I have a couple of suggestions. One sort of little addendum, though. My is I would go for Spelljammer. I would even use the 5e books that support Spelljammer for the world building itself. So it is the traveling from different worlds to different worlds, so you can have different fantasy setups in each world. You could obviously use gates in just regular 5e, but it's much more flavorful that you're traveling back and forth world to world via, spell ships and such. That's where I would see easiest way to do it. Again, it is a fairly standard fantasy novel with a very cool spell system based on language. You certainly could make all of your spell components somatic and such, or verbal rather. So yes, that would be my main piece there. However, I would like to put in an honorable mention just for the magic system, not for the actual game itself. But Changeling has a wonderful way to do counterspells. In almost all other role-playing games I have seen, counterspells is kind of dull.
It's just a nerf. Like, nope, you can't do it.
It's like you can't do it. With the Changeling magic system, there is a very robust counterspelling functionality with your cantrips. You can cast spells on spells. So, for example, when a rival wizard is casting a spell to turn you into a newt, you can cast a spell that will hopscotch that spell and bounce it up over to the next person over. You can, unweave it in different and creative ways depending on what you have at your disposal in your magic. So it makes these sort of wizard duel counterspellings much more interesting and effective. The world building there, totally different. Wouldn't use that for the world there, but for the magic system, it's a cool magic system.
Awesome. That sounds great. Scott, what advice do you have for folks if they were going to try and recreate the Sundered Realms in their TTRPG?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in with Chris on the fact that you need a fairly broad-based system that you can do a lot of counterspell stuff, because there's a lot of that in the book. You need a kind of like a free-flow magic system. Years ago, when I did my campaign in high school and in college, like a lot of people did, we wrote our own system. And I have a system called Darkland, which was where it was basically 7 different types of magic, and you built your spells on the fly. Something like that. So out of the published stuff around, I'm going to pick Ars Magica. Ars Magica has a pretty broad ability to cast magic, and their counterspell issue is very interesting. They use nouns and verbs to make 2-word counterspells, and I think that's kind of interesting. I haven't played Ars Magica literally in years, but I would have to pick that just for that part. The fluidity of the magic, I think, would buy into this.
I love this system, and I think it's very thematically compatible, because you're right. You're making the form is kind of the noun, and the technique is kind of the adjective.
Yes.
And so it's very language based.
I think it's a good tie-in to the actual book, too. So since they use language, a specific language as the basis for all this spell.
I steered away from the magic and went for the romance that isn't the romance. I thought that the Blue Rose RPG, currently being published by Green Ronin Press, uses the age system, like Dragon Age and Modern Age game engine. It's a little lighter than 5e, but still has a decent number of dice. And that system has a whole lot of stuff about relationships. Those relationships are built up over time. They can be positive or negative. And depending on the intensity rating that these get, you can have more bonuses that allow you to do other things in game. It's also important that it's not just a romantic set of relationships. It can be everything from familial bond or professional admiration, and it's also incredibly LGBTQ inclusive. So if you wanted to do the romance of the book, even though it's not necessarily this, we're not going to necessarily call this one a romance. If you wanted to do the romance of the book, I think Blue Rose RPG would probably work super well for that. Like I said, it's not on the super crunchy side, but it does have some interesting tactics. that can be used both in physical combat as well as spell combat. So all of those little bits and pieces, I think, would make it a nice matchup for the Sundered Realms. There's still tons to talk about this book. And Dave, we're going to start with you and have you tell us, if you weren't planning on running this as a whole game in and of itself, but you read this book, and so you probably found something that you'd like to put inside your own game. So what would be portable that you could just lift out of here and drop into your own home campaign?
Absolutely. I do believe theft is a high art form for GM, so I endorse it thoroughly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I've always enjoyed a good magic system that makes sense and makes it interesting to play Magic. And so I was drawn to the idea that this was the counterspelling that went on and a lot of the abjuration magic. There was a lot of, I'm trying to dispel your magic because I'm smarter and I have a better technique. And I'd want to steal that. And if the stealing doesn't have to stop, I would want to then steal the roll and keep system from dueling in 7th Sea, which was nice and intricate. And it had a good back and forth. If you did this maneuver, this would work better this way, so on and so forth. And I would just reskin it with counterspelling so that I could have wizards and sorcerers and other magic practitioners really thinking about, if I try this one, then this will happen, whereas I try this one, then this will happen. And it makes kind of a little mini game in the game.
And that is definitely something that you, as a veteran wizard player, really enjoy. I know from watching you do it.
Yes, I do like the magic stuff. Absolutely.
Chris?
I would steal, much like Dave, I like the magic system, but I would steal the linguistic element to the magic system, making the words that you use in a spell matter and making the language that you use in the spell matter to change things. One of the things that I have used in my games, just really as a prop previously, is I've worked on a dictionary for many, many years. The Dictionary of Indo-European Roots gives you linguistic bits to put together that mean something in this proto-language that they created. So it sounds like a magic language, but isn't. And that's what reminded me of the super magic language they had there. So I would steal that idea using a more fluffy system than D&D, or possibly like in a mage game sort of thing. The what you say when you say it magically matters. And if you can use a different language for your magic, you get bonuses and such. So that's where I would steal it for the flavor.
Absolutely. I really like the idea of languages in the game. Unfortunately, a large part of role-playing is communicating with other people. And at some point, I really need to find the absolute best way to incorporate different languages in the game without everyone being like, say, trilingual, because there's only so much that you can do when you're writing it and you can imagine there's a foreign language there. That's one thing. But when you're performing it, not that we perform per se, but when we're in game and going through that, trying to get into that flow state that we try to when we're playing the game, not being able to communicate breaks that flow, and that makes it feel weird. But I think within this context, when we're talking about spells, and that's just in that little sort of spell mini game, like as Dave described it, I think we can afford to go and really get into that kind of detail that you're describing, Chris.
It could even be as down there as, I'm going to use the goblin word for smash here, which has different connotations, and it means a smash here for a goblin involves fruit.
So everything's going to be covered in jelly when it's all over.
Exactly.
One suspects you guys are trying to boost sales of dictionaries with your modifications to the role-playing system.
I don't. Yes, that's true. However, I will point out that I no longer have any financial interest in that. So
just nerd interest.
Just nerd interest.
I will mention that the only successful time I've ever been able to portray a foreign language that I could not speak, I was working with one of my high school groups, and nobody in the group had taken Dwarven as a language, and they ran into a group of dwarves. And the way that I represented the Dwarven language was to go beard, beard, mustache, 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 beard, mustache, beard, mustache. That's how dwarves talked around everybody. That's what it sounded like to them all. And
that seems like canon to me.
Yeah, I like that.
I still have former game people who I run into who will walk up to me and go, oh, hey, Mr. Jackson, mustache, beard. So it definitely went pretty well. I think that could be really fun to sort of like, okay, if you're going to represent each group, what would you pick as the 3 words that everything sounds like, right? Like, is it berry, leaf, berry for elves, or what? That kind of a thing.
That's funny.
Those are certainly the dwarf languages for elves.
All right. Well, off of the language piece and onto the last piece of portable stuff that I'd like to take out of this game, or actually I have 2. The first one is continuing with the counterspelling thing. I love that the demons are all anti-magic. So often, particularly in D&D, like demons have spells and they have all these spell casting abilities and they can do all these things, and they're basically like little wizards. Even the lower level ones have like cool magical abilities they can do, but in this book they're demons and you just can't hurt them with magic, and they're also basically immune to most weapons too, so they're just nastily indestructible. And I love the idea that like they would be at least mostly magic resistance in almost everything, and that they drained magic out of the world, which harkens back to the Dark Sun campaign,
Right.
where like if you cast spells, like it sucks life out of the planet. That's what that reminded me of.
Very cool.
And the other thing I liked was there was a neutral priesthood. They were definitely neutral, and they were like sort of loan sharks. And if we will help people, but at a price. But everyone was allowed to talk to them, which made for a really great place for characters who don't just want to go into the dungeon and smash things, and maybe actually want to try and figure out, how do I actually get to talk to the evil overlord or his minions before we go in and smash them? Like, is there a way?
I love a good morally ambiguous character.
Oh yeah.
Neruthkar, Priest of the Forgotten, an order that cropped up in the shadiest of places to ostensibly offer solace to people who have none.
Yeah, that was a very cool character.
Cool concept for a religious order.
Yeah.
Yep. And easily portable to almost any campaign you're working with.
Absolutely.
So. I'm not married to this whole fabulous nerdy word system that we've been talking about here. All right. Anybody else have other items that they want to lift from the Sundered Realms?
They had a neat idea for that half-demon sister.
Oh, yeah.
Banner. She was a fascinating character who is portable as well, because she didn't belong in this book.
And I think I told you guys in the pregame that our Priest of the Forgotten and the half-demon sister person are the subject of the second Forgotten Realms book. There is no scheduled date for it yet, but it is planned. So you will get to see both of those characters who were definitely scene stealers get their own book coming up. That being one of the really good things about romance novels is whenever there's another pair of people we can pair up, we get another book.
Oh, yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to predict that they're going to flip the whole demon thing, because it was, the demons were very vaguely defined, and you're going to see it from the point of view of people like the Priest of the Forgotten and the half demon, adopted sister. That suddenly the demons are actually people from other realms that are, just opposite or something like that. There's going to be something like that where the demons are going to have more relevance. It's my guess.
Be a neat twist.
All right. Now that we've started talking about other books, besides Casey Blair's other books, of which she has many, one of which I read, which was the Tea Princess Chronicles, of which there are 4 books, and I know what it sounds like. I really liked it. This was a cozy political diplomatic thriller. It involves magic tea, baby dragons, and found family while making the world a better place one cup of tea at a time.
Wow.
That's the tagline.
That sounds very nice.
It is. It's very nice. There are 4 books. There are also dragons that are trapped in mists. There's another magical apocalypse in this book. There's magical flamethrowers.
What's going on?
There's interesting royalty. So other than that, Casey Blair, one of Casey Blair's other books, I would like to hear if you guys have other things to recommend about books, stories, media that feel like this book and would help other GMs sort of like get into the same headspace. Chris, do you want to start?
Okay, so I'm going to go a little offbeat with mine. First of all, the video game Disco Elysium
Ooh.
for the broken world feel of things. You play a broken character as well. So the characters that you're playing there are very, very much not like the ones in this. But the world itself is a fractured one, and you can see the gnawings at the edges there as chaos is taking over, is destroying literally everything other than these islands that are floating together that have been connected. So it's a fascinating video game that I would definitely recommend. It is also deeply funny in a disturbing way. So
Ooh, okay.
solid recommend there. And just to piggyback on Dave want for the demon versions being outside and having their own worldview and thinking themselves, the old series of books by Robert Aspirin, the Myth series, starting with Another
Absolutely.
Fine Myth.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great old comedy fantasy series with some nice world hopping and some wild differences jumping from universe to universe or dimension to dimension. Demon meaning just dimensional traveler. So
They just look bad to our eyes. They're not bad.
yeah.
They're just scaly and have
Well,
horns.
they look bad to you. To the other ones, they're quite attractive.
Yeah, sure.
Did you guys ever see the comic for Myth Adventures?
Yes.
Oh yes,
Phil Foglio?
Phil Foglio. Yeah.
Yeah, Phil Foglio. Yeah, that's. I just want to make sure. Always plug for Phil Foglio. He and Kaja are just great people and great stuff. Scott, you have some media recommendations for us?
Yeah, I actually have three. I'm going to go back again to Riddle the Wren by Charles DeLint. It's kind of a YA book, but it's written in the 70s. It's a great book for any of you that have children in the, early teen, mid-teen ages. You know what? I enjoyed it well as an adult too. Great book about, it's a little Tolkien-esque in some ways. There are the Balrogs and the equivalent of orcs and things like that. But it's all about this young woman who's trying to basically save the world. Epic adventure with a group of people. Very cool. Riddle of the Wren. I highly recommend that. It ties into this. There's a lot of gates in it. And the next one I'll say is Barbara Hambly's The Walls of Air. It's also part of a series about a isolated group of people. So basically, they've lived in these giant redoubts that have been trapped hundreds of years, and generations come and go. They come out and they realize that the demons are able to actually gate in, and there's a big fight. So there's three books. Very good series. And last, only because the main character in this, the wizard, we'll call him a wizard, or the sorcerer, he was pretty powerful. And so was she. She learned to be almost just as powerful as he is. Because of that, there's a book, the Cold Fire series by C.S. Friedman. I think the first one's called Black Sun Trilogy. It's Black Sun Trilogy. It's about a guy who's immensely powerful as a wizard, as a mage. What he comes up against that's much more powerful is him. I don't remember there being a lot about gates in it, but it gave me a similar feel, although it's a much darker book if you are going to read it. It's not light and fluffy like this was. Dark and full of malice, but very interesting and good series as well. Cold Fire series by C.S. Friedman. And those are the three I have.
Dave,
Yes.
would you care to give us some media recommendations? Sorry.
I would be happy to give you some media recommendations. I anticipated this was coming up somehow. When I read this book, I was really drawn into, of course, the use of the gates, big factor. And also it made me think of games I've run and things I've seen that involve seeing other identities. So I was brought to thinking of two television shows, Sliders and also Fringe, because the characters were viewed through a different lens when they were in a different place. And I even ran a short-lived campaign with my good dear friend Donald C. Foley, where we took full advantage of the old hero system, which allowed you to create characters that could have laser guns and magic powers at the same time. And people would go through gates, and then suddenly they'd be translated into their version that fit into that world. And suddenly they'd have to come to deal with the fact that their identities were a little bit different in that world. And I kind of like that factor of a traveling game. So it really made me think of those television shows, which I really did enjoy watching.
Just to wrap things up, I know I've already given up one of mine, so I would say If you're looking for something that's as close to a match as possible, and this one is called The Shattered Realm, which is very similar to the Sundered Realm. It's by Michael Reeves, and it is about a planet that gets blown up, and there are floating islands where people can be, and everyone has to travel by dragon bone ship. But this relic from the late 80s is definitely interesting and wonderful and has lots of great side characters. So the Shattered Realm is definitely in that same sort of milieu. I would also recommend a more recent book, Babel by R.F. Kuang. If you really want to do nerdy language spellcasting, this book is all about like how you get magic by translating from one language to another language. It is a little academic, and it is also definitely anti-colonialist and deals with that problem on part of its major plot points. So not a fluffy book, but the magic system is really terribly interesting and worth the read just for that. Also, I think it won like a bunch of awards. So if you're into that kind of book award thing, that's great. But as a game master, that's an interesting magic system there. And then finally, for world traveling and gates, I have to recommend, much as Scott did, a YA book, the Crestomancy series by Diana Wynne Jones. It starts off with, there's 6 books, starts off with Charmed Life and goes on. There's a bunch of really great books. You may recognize the name Diana Wynne Jones from Howl's Moving Castle, as well as The Tough's Guide to Fantasyland and The Dark Lord of Dirkholm. Diana Wynne Jones is just a consummate YA person, and her take on traveling between realms is terribly interesting, and I think would be a good complement to the Sundered Realms. We all good, gentlemen?
I think so.
Ready to wrap this up and say good things about each other and things that are happening?
Oh, we have to say good things about each other.
Oh,
I forgot
no.
to warn you, there's a compliment duel at the end of this. How will I deal with that? I know that there is, and Chris actually mentioned it, and I didn't in my intro, so I also have run games at Rising Phoenix, and we obviously have 2 of the creators and runners of that con. So, gentlemen, do you want to say wonderful things about your con so that everybody knows where to go and how to go play?
We would love to. Rising Phoenix Game Con, we're going into our 5th year. It's going to be a special year for us. We are in Milford, Massachusetts at the Doubletree, right off of 495. The convention is in April. This year it's running from the 24th to the 26th. It's a full-size con. We have RPGs. We have board games. We have a 400-plus board game library. We have a Catan tournament. We have panels. We have seminars. We have special guests. We have a slew of great vendors. We have all kinds of fun stuff to do for the kids. We continue every year to bring more and more stuff that we think that people will like. Last year we had yoga in the mornings to limber up before your games. We've had in the past, we had a sword troupe come and do a show. We really try to be a kind of a cross between a Ren Fair and a Game Con. When you come, you will feel that you are at a convention. You will not feel like you're at a hotel and there's a bunch of other stuff going on there. You'll feel like you're home.
You are in the environment.
Our goal is diversity and inclusion. We are very adamant about that. Please come and join us. All are welcome. It's a safe place to come and game, and we would love for you to join us. You can check us out at www.risingphoenixgamecon.com. We will go live for badges in November of this year. This being our 5th year, we've got some special stuff planned. I'm not even going to talk about it yet, but some cool stuff coming up. All right, so we hope to see you there. Last year, we had about 420 events. So we had 625 people last year. So we're hoping to do a little better this year.
Do the compliment thing. Scott did an excellent job of covering everything that our con does, and please do come to the con. We do look forward to seeing you next year in April 2026.
Fantastic. Chris, didn't you have something coming up as well?
I do have a couple things. I just want to, for the compliment, I would like to thank Dave and Scott for putting the convention on for my birthday. Since every year it has been there, and it has been a wonderful experience for me.
Chris, I'm making a note, so there will be something this year. Maybe we'll knight you or something.
There we go.
All right then. But yeah, I will be running games at that con. I don't know exactly which ones they are going to be, but I have a good idea. I always run a comedy vampire game in the vein.
On time. A week. Tip your waitress.
Of What We Do in the Shadows, and probably a changeling and sci-fi game as well throughout the weekend. Speaking of sci-fi games, I just want to promote my friend Peter Michaud's game, the Cosmos Sci-Fi RPG, which we're hoping will have an expanded edition next year. I do the design and layout for that book, and it came out for the first time last year. It had its printed debut at Rising Phoenix.
He did.
He did very well.
Yeah, yeah.
He's a
I
nice,
was quite happy
nice
with
guy.
that.
Great idea. I like his system.
Yeah, yeah.
Very cool.
To continue the compliments, also, I wanted to thank you guys for allowing me to do our first live broadcast for the podcast at Rising Phoenix, and hopefully we will be back again. Very excited to have the Game Masters Book Club be at Rising Phoenix in 2026.
You're always welcome, my friend.
Huzzah.
And I wanted to say thank you for inviting me to this. This was fun. One of the other things about Rising Phoenix, we're all about literacy. That's very important. I think the future of gaming in general comes from literacy. I think a lot of us all started young reading. I think it's very important. Feed your head. It's good for you. Please read.
Read more books.
Read more books.
And that was The Sundered Realms by Casey Blair. Thanks again to David Clarkson, Chris Grannis, and new to the podcast GM, Scott Legault, for reviewing this language nerd fantasy book with me. You folks are the best. Join this trio again when they review Sterling E. Lehner's Hero's Journey in March of 2026.
You can find a complete transcript of today's discussion, as well as links to all of our podcasts at k-squareproductions.com/GMBC. You can learn about upcoming episodes on our social media on Blue Sky at gmbookclub.bluesky.social, on Facebook at Game Masters Book Club, on Mastodon at Game Masters Book Club, and on Instagram at Game Masters Book Club. If you've enjoyed the show, please like, subscribe, and comment on our episodes in your chosen podcasting space, and be sure to share those episodes with your gaming community. You've been listening to the Game Masters Book Club, brought to you by me, Eric Jackson, and K-Square Productions. Continued praise and thanks to John Corbett for the podcast artwork and Otis Galloway for our music.
Join us again in 2 weeks when author and tabletop enthusiasts Marissa Wolf, Casey Azell, and Melissa Olthop explore one of the classic speculative fiction settings, Pern, as we review Anne McCaffrey's Dragonflight.
Later, gamers, and to paraphrase the great Terry Pratchett, always try to be the place where the falling angel meets the rising ape.